the example through reconciliation.
Be the example with evangelism.
Be the example with accountability.
Be the example.
With love.
We are G-R.E.A.L.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of our G-R.E.A.L podcast. I promise by at least the 5th episode we'll give it a name, but for right now, it's just us. We here. I'm Duran. I'm here with my partner Paul.
What up, though?
And my cousin Maya.
Other people represent.
Here we go. We are down one person today. Y'all pray for Miss Robinson as she's not feeling well. So Jasmine, we wish you speedy recovery. Thank you so much. What happened?
Keep playing your prayers.
Gotta keep. Yes, you gotta add it to the sick and shut in list. So how was everybody's day today?
Mine was all right. It was all right. It was a good day at work, and I'm glad I'm not at work, and we're here.
Yeah, it was a day at work, a tedious journey, but we are here.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, we want to go ahead and dive right into it. We've had some interesting topics our last couple of podcasts, but as we're a young adult ministry and we talk about wanting to connect with the young adults, there's something that we want to talk about tonight that is pretty prevalent, I guess, in the form of church hurt. Church hurt is our topic tonight, and I pulled out the phone so that way we can have a definition of what church hurt is, because we know people talk about church hurt a lot, and depending on who you are and where you grew up, either you believe church hurt is real or it's not. And I done lost the definition already, but basically it said it defines it as a broad term referencing the pain, either physical or emotional, people experience within a church setting.
Can you say that one more time for the people?
Oh, yeah. Let me, for the people in the back. Church hurt is a broad term referencing the pain, physical or emotional, that people experience within a church setting. Within a church setting. So now that we have...
Are we on the same page about that definition?
I mean, I'll let y'all talk first, because I'm going to tell you how I feel about church hurt. They might be mad at me.
The broad for me. The broad and the word. Because it includes so much into what church hurt is and how church hurt feel. So you can't just make it something small in its definition. So I get how it's very vague in its definition, but I definitely got some questions involved with church hurt, which makes it still a very vague topic. So I definitely got a good question that I can't wait to get to.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that definition is the last part when it said hurt that happened within a church setting. Some people think it's church hurt that happens to you, right? Like the church is the one that does the hurting. But that was very interesting that they specified within a church setting, which sounds like some other stuff might have happened at a church. So that's interesting, when I feel like a lot of people believe the definition is the church did the hurt.
Right. I guess we're gonna dive into it. So now, if you've experienced church, I mean, we've all been hurt at church. We've all had our feelings hurt at church at some form, some way, or in some form, way, fashion, whatever. It's all happened. So a lot of times I feel like church hurt is people just kind of getting in their feelings because they weren't able to get what they feel they wanted. I mean, I've had my feelings hurt at church, but it never stopped me from going to church. Never been like, oh, I'm church hurt. Y'all hurt my feelings. I ain't coming back. And again, I'm not making fun of anybody who's experienced church hurt, but I think that when it says within the church setting, we got to really look and take a deep dive into what is church hurt. I mean, just because you was hurt at church doesn't necessarily mean like it's church hurt. It could have been somebody who hurt you And if that somebody hurt you and stopped you from coming to church, maybe you should reevaluate your relationship. But I guess we can deep dive later into that. But I mean, like I said, I've been hurt at church. Have you two ever experienced church hurt? And if you have, if you don't mind telling what it was, what was it and how did it make you feel and how did you overcome it?
Ladies first.
Go ahead.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Wow. I said ladies first.
Right.
Oh, that's not what I
She
meant.
slighted you, man. She slighted you.
I'm so sorry. I'm still processing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thinking about all them years of church hurt.
It's been a long time. I've been on this earth for 30 years. So there's a lot to go back in the file.
I'm a church baby. So I've been around church my whole life. Church hurt, I can't say necessarily, well, let me not say I've never experienced church hurt. I would say I've been fired from some churches before. I definitely has been fired from some churches before, and that hurt. Because I worked many jobs. The only jobs I got fired from was from the church. Wow. Interesting.
Never going back to that place.
So, like I said, it's a job. It was a job at the time. I wasn't necessarily a member of that particular church that I got fired from, but I know for instance, I didn't agree with some of the things that was going on, and my actions led to my firing. So I can't say that the church hurt me. Mm-hmm. At the same time, they let me go. I wasn't mad about it. So, in a sense, getting fired is never a happy feeling. Having disagreements about the church service and what's going on, and everything that involves the theology, the philosophy, the ideology of the leader or the pastor. When you don't agree, it's just best to go separate ways than to try to sit there and cause problems down the line at the church. Yeah. Let me since I opened the door, let me go there. I know this is off topic, but if at any point in time that you are in disagreement with a church philosophy, disagreement with anything that goes on in the church, you should probably talk to somebody about it and don't fester in it and cause problems down the road. Yeah. It's probably best that you probably find another church that you can probably go to, mm-hmm. than to sit there and cause problems at that particular church. Right. I don't know why that led me down that road, but somebody needed to hear that.
That's probably why it led you down that road.
Instead of staying at a church where you're hurt at, there are thousands of churches that you can go to and that you can get involved, be involved, and you don't have to feel that same hurt at multiple churches. Right. So in my situation, I didn't feel the need to fight and stay because I didn't agree. I moved on. I'm in a great church right now, so I love it. It wasn't a church in Tampa, so don't think about any churches in Tampa. But church hurt has definitely, I've seen it hurt people. I've seen people disagree and it split churches. And a lot of churches around the corner started because of church hurt. Right. Which is an interesting thing, but I'm going to put a pin right there. Right. And go to you. Are you done processing? Because I can keep going.
Well, it sounded like you had more to share, but I think we should give it to the people experts. Yeah. If I were to say that I had church hurt, I don't know if it was a particular like event that happened, mm-hmm. That sticks out, but it was more so like leadership in terms of what you expect a particular leader to do or act like, and they do something different than that expectation, and it makes you question like, who are you? Is this real? Is this, I expected you to live up to this this perfect idea that I have of you because that's what you expect of me. And so I think that disillusionment might be church hurt. And quite candidly, from my scrolls on the internet, it sounds like that's what a lot of people our age are quantifying as church hurt of like, well, it's all this judgment and it's all this, that, and the third, and hypocrisy and all of that, more so than a particular instance that happened. Yeah. And so I think it's that of just like, how you want me to live a certain way and you not doing it. Right. And you, on my case, when I make a mistake, more so than the people in leadership, and like, and how is that translating to people not wanting to come to church no more?
Right.
You know, and how are we creating a space where folks can feel their feelings, and have conversations with folks in leadership, especially your pastor, your ministers, your deacons, and say, this is how I took what the situation was like. What is the Christian way to respond to it? What insight can you provide me? What wisdom? What guidance? Instead of assuming stuff, going home, letting it fester, getting on the line, going on TikTok, going on Instagram Live, or whatever the case may be, and airing out what you think might have happened, and it might not even be all that.
Yeah. You really hit it on the head there when you said what is the Christian way to do it, and that's found in Matthew. You know, if you have an issue with your brother or your sister, the Bible clearly says go to them and tell it. And I think, no, I don't think, I know one of the biggest issues we have as a church, or in the church, not our church, but as a whole, we pacify. We have this pacifying thought of we should never disagree with our brothers and sisters in Christ, or our brothers and sisters in Christ should never give us a problem. But when you realize you're dealing with flesh and we're all flawed, everybody's going to have their mistakes and their shortcomings. So the first step is to go to that person. But if you're not going to that person, but you're going to everybody else and talking, you're really not helping the situation. And then the second step is if you go to that person and they still don't change their ways, they're still offending, then you bring in some unbiased witnesses to sit down with them and y'all have that conversation. After the second attempt, if you still don't do it, then that's when you bring them before the church. And what does the Bible say? You treat them like a tax collector and a publican. Basically, you treat them for what they are. You know who they are. You still love them, but understand what you're dealing with. And I think a lot of times in our churches, we don't realize who we're dealing with. We don't know who we're talking, because we can be cliquish, or we can, again, just assume that everybody we come in contact with at the church, we're supposed to be buddy with, and nobody's going to hurt your feelings, but we're people. You know, your boss hurts your feelings all the time. You still go to work. When you in school, people bully you in school, people talk about you in school, you still go to school. But when it comes to the church, instead of, like you said, instead of maybe finding a different congregation, finding something that fits us, we get hurt, we get into our feelings, and then we label all the churches as the same. We label every Christian as the same, and it's like, well, I'm not going to church because the church hurt me. Did the church hurt you? Or did somebody in the church hurt you? Or did you let your feelings get in the way and you hurt you?
Say that one more time.
I forgot what I said. Okay, did the church hurt you? Did somebody in the church hurt your feelings and that hurt you? I think I said that. Or did you hurt you? Basically, did you overthink the situation? Not talk to the person, let all that fester up, and did you hurt you? Because a lot of times it's us getting in the way of ourselves. I mean, I've had a little bit of church hurt. I guess nothing that made me want to leave the church, but just some things that just didn't happen. I just leave it at that. Just didn't happen, or things that I thought could, help in certain situations. And it's like, no, we're not going to go that route. And then you see something else come around that. And it's just like, wait a minute, but we just talked about, you told me. So then it's like, okay, is it me? Or was it just not for me to do? What were you about to say?
Well, I think that goes back to the point I said earlier, is a lot of times it feels like church leadership is held to a higher standard, right? Because to the analogy you said earlier, our boss hurts our feelings, but we still go to work, right? Like, we don't give grace and space to understand that people in church leadership are humans too, right? They're going to make mistakes. Sometimes they miscalculate a thing and say, well, maybe you're not ready for the thing. And then, and you feel like you are. And they make that judgment on their own, under their own fruition. And so why do we hold church leaders, pastors, to a higher esteem and also not give them grace to make mistakes?
That's a really good question. I wish I knew the full answer, but if I had to give an answer, it's because in the church, if you're a leader in the congregation's eyes, in the normal congregants' eyes, you're supposed to be above reproach. I mean, the Bible does say that, live above reproach. But I guess we forget all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, because we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to be perfect, but I think the biggest issue is, ooh, I'm gonna set somebody off. I feel like a lot of people who are church hurt don't read their Bible. They don't know the word. And I'm not discrediting anybody's feelings, any of that. But I also feel like if we take a step back and understand that we do have to give grace, understand that we are dealing with humans and people are going to fall. And if we don't take the necessary steps and approach to try to fix the church hurt, then we're stuck there. But going back to what you said, why don't we give leadership and pastors and ministers, whoever, grace? Is because unfortunately in our eyes, we put them on a pedestal that they don't need to be in. And we give them so much power. We give the pastor so much power. I'll talk personally, and I'm not bashing anybody, but there's plenty of times where people will say, oh, we want the pastor to do this for us. We want the pastor to do this. And the pastor's like, I can't do this, but I'm going to send X, Y, and Z. And then somebody's like, oh, no, the pastor didn't do it. I'm hurt. I'm not going back to church. That pastor made me mad. What's the difference between your prayer, the pastor's prayer, or the deacon's prayer if you're all saved?
Praying to the same God.
You're praying to the same God. Somebody might add a little more whatever to it, but it shouldn't matter who's praying for you or who's sending you this or who's sending you that. I think once we stop putting leaders on a pedestal, I think a lot of that church hurt can change. But until then, and then, like I said, until we get into our Bibles and we understand the role of the church, when we understand the role of leadership and we understand what's required of us, we probably won't be so sensitive.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to throw something out there for your thought process. At church, we are vulnerable. We become vulnerable at church. We open ourselves up. Worship is developing that relationship with God. Praise and worship, we become vulnerable to what that pastor is saying, what that church leader is doing. So now, as we open up to the church, we open up to the people, we become very vulnerable. And when something happens that we don't like from the people who we trust and we put a lot of love into, we follow what they're saying, we listen to what they're saying, we set them high. And then when something happens and it comes down hard and we get very emotional, and that makes us very vulnerable. And that is where I believe that church hurt is the foundation of it. It's because we're so vulnerable as people. So when pastor doesn't come after we call him, we get hurt because we open ourselves up. Pastor, come in our home, pray for our family. Kiss my baby.
Right.
My baby. Meet my cousins, my family's in. I'm sending them over there.
Right.
We become so vulnerable, and to be that way in the church, which we should be. We should be able to be vulnerable in the church. We should be able to open up our emotions towards each other in the church, and we pray that once we open up ourselves to one another, that you don't use the information I give to you to hurt me.
Right.
And I think that's where that church hurt, or where it festers, because we're vulnerable, and when church leaders hurt us, because that's who we trust more than anybody.
Right.
And some of what we consider our fathers or our mothers, that hurt is real, because even if your mother and father hurt you,
yeah,
you're vulnerable to that stuff.
Yeah.
And let your mother and father, there's some people that haven't spoken to their mother and fathers in years, because of the hurt that they have. It's the same as a pastor. You put them on the same level, if not above, your father or your mother.
Yeah.
Like I said, we affectionately call Pastor Roundtree Pop.
Yeah.
And call a mom. So it's that vulnerability that we put them on a high pedestal. So when something happens at church, we expect that protection to be there from the pastor, or the protection for our feelings to be there for the pastor. And sometimes we feel like it's not there, or we don't get it, or somebody hurts us and that protection is not there. And the last place you want to be is in a place where we don't feel protected.
Right.
And then last thing I would say is that emotions are natural.
Emotions make you cry
Just because
sometimes.
you are a Christian don't mean that you are not emotional. And sometimes our vulnerability brings out our emotions.
Yeah.
Carl Thomas.
And so when we get vulnerable, we bring out our emotions, and we can't let the emotions get the best of us, because that's schemes of the devil.
Yes,
The
sir.
devil
Yes,
tries to
sir.
come in
Come on,
and tempt
Ephesians.
us with our emotions.
Yeah.
And try to tear us away. There's a lot of emotions. It's okay to be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
That's what song said.
It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be vulnerable. But let us help mold and shape you. And we're not trying to take away your emotions from the church. You're going to always try to be vulnerable, because you're going to cry. You're going to be arms open wide, everything. But we love that. But we don't want your openness and your vulnerability to lead to emotional damage or hurt at the church.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by the choir practicing in the background. Two, I really appreciate you going before me, because you provided a lot of context of what I think, like I want to say in terms of, like, yes, I do believe, to y'all's point, that leadership should be held to a higher standard, and there should be accountability, right? Because if there's something that happens where a leader acts out of turn, or does cause some, or a traumatic event happens, they should not go by without some sort of justice happening, or something happening. But I think that also comes to the point where we say, okay, this person did something to me. What is the proper way to navigate that? And if it is found that that person did something to me, how do we make sure that there is accountability? Because I think often about, like, we hear the really traumatizing stories of, pastors who take advantage of young people in the church, and all of these things. They're abusing their power. And yes, I do believe that that is a form of church hurt, and that also should be held accountable. And maybe that's something that we start implementing into, like, new members classes, that says, this is how you are a Christian, this is what your responsibility is to the church, and this is what disagreements or conflict or accountability looks like, so we can manage people's expectations.
Yeah. I got another one too, because I mentioned, did they hurt you or did you hurt you? How much of people's church hurt is because they don't want to be corrected? That, I know we talked about, leadership impacting church hurt, but let's just be honest. We're humans. We fall short, and sometimes people have babies out of wedlock, and they're serving, and they are told that they need to sit down, or you live an alternative lifestyle, and the church doesn't agree with that, and they may ask you to step aside or sit down, or you just not holding up your role as a member, and somebody called you out on it and tried to correct you in love. Did you receive that correction, or did you take it as them attacking? Now, granted, some people's deliveries are horrible. They don't know how to deliver it to people. So there is a delivery. I think a lot of church hurt does come from delivery too. There's people who don't know how to deliver a correction to somebody and say, hey, you should consider X, Y, and Z, rather than, this is wrong, God don't like that, you need to stop immediately.
So here's the thing, right? Because I agree that people should be corrected when we make mistakes, and also, like, yeah, we can't see the future, and people are gonna have, a baby out of wedlock or whatever. But if there is something that the church disagrees with as a belief system, why did we allow space for that to begin with, right? Again, if that's something that we are saying that we're teaching folks, like, this is what we believe as a church, these are foundational principles, so there's no question, there's no, like, it can be misconstrued, and so then the hurt isn't as deep, maybe, right? We all have our different ways that we experience hurt, but it's like, you knew what it was when you signed up, right? Like, so that's a very different way, but are we really doing our job and telling people, like, this is what we stand on business about, so when we get to this place, we're going to have a conversation, we're going to try to do it in love, but this is the business we stand on.
I think it is. I think a lot of it isn't going to be on Sunday morning. And that's when a lot of people come.
My God, today.
A lot of people want correction and they want the word on Sunday. And Sunday, for people who don't know, as a preacher, that's not necessarily the time to do Bible study and teaching. Preaching is, okay, a culmination of what does the text say? How do I get the people to apply this? How do I equip them? How do I edify them? When you want the deep dive of stuff, gotta come to Sunday school, gotta come to Bible study. Those things matter, because if you're looking for that stuff on Sunday, you're missing it. And it's there. It's there. I know for the last 10, almost 11 years, our pastor does what he can on Sundays, but Wednesdays is really the heart and the meat of everything. And if you're not coming to new members orientation when you join a church, that's why it's there. It's not just to say you have to go to this class and now you're officially a member. You got to know what this church agrees and doesn't agree with. Because if there's a couple who wants to get married and the church doesn't believe in that, you can't get mad at the church because they said, well, we don't honor that. You knew what it was when you signed up, or at least you should have, because then now, well, that church doesn't accept me, this church doesn't, this, that, and third. Boom, church hurt. Now, instead of maybe finding another church, now you're upset, you're not going back to church, you don't want to do nothing with the church, nothing with Christians. And it's just like, did you hold up your end of the deal? Do you know what the Bible says we're supposed to do as Christians? Do you know what the church that you're going to believes in, what they will do, what they won't do? Have you considered that before you decided you were church hurt and you left the church?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about us being personally responsible and, like, not just joining. In my world of politics, we talk about it all the time in terms of candidates. Mm-hmm. Like, we want political candidates to make us feel something, right? Like, that's why we want to go out and vote, because they made us feel a type of way. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes that's what people go to look for when they're looking for a church home too.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like a pastor that makes you feel something. And not necessarily all of the structural pieces like Bible study. What does their Sunday school program look like, and their youth ministry, and all of these things, or their young adult ministry. And those things aren't interrogated before we actually sign up to do a thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's something that we should have more conversations about, of like, what are you supposed to be looking for when you're looking for a church home? Yeah. And so that way, like you said, you can ask the right questions, or ask questions that are important to you about what the church believes. Are we on the same page about a thing? And then that way, either I can make the decision, I can make the choice to keep coming to this church or not, or I can make the choice to go to a different church. That doesn't give you license to bounce, right? Or we're not saying that. Church hop. Yeah, we're not saying that to set a precedence of church hopping. However, right, like, there should be, because if you're in your word, it tells you, about what to look for in churches, like in terms of going into the storehouse and all of those things, and I think that's really something we need to talk more about being spiritually mature.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me go ahead and say this. Don't assume.
Yeah.
Please don't assume what your church believes in. Please don't assume the Constitution or the bylaws or the policy of the church.
Man.
I'm blessed to have been in churches where the Constitution and the bylaws are available to everybody.
Everybody.
I believe she have an open book. So, and by the Constitution and bylaws of this church, this particular church, a lot of things are open to the church members. So you don't have to assume what's going on with the church. You don't have to assume what's going on with the church finances. You don't have to assume what's going on in the church business meeting. We are a open book here at New Mount Zion.
Yeah.
We have quarterly business meetings, whether people attend them or not, where we discuss finances. We discuss what money did we spend, how much money we make in tithing, and so we share information. And if I just need a copy of my financial statement or the church bylaws, Constitution, I just email it down to the church. And as a full member with full benefits,
Right.
I should be able to have access to that information. And sometimes some people don't even have access to that information, and they've been going to their church 20, 25 years. So
They'd be church hurt if they really saw what was going on.
yeah, so if they don't know what's going on, a lot of church hurt comes from assuming that the church is paying for the pastor's new car he just got,
Boy.
and assuming that you don't have to assume. You should be able to ask questions at your church to get more information. You should be able to assume what's in the Constitution, what's in the bylaws. If a church is not doing something and it's in the Constitution or bylaws when you join the church, whose fault is it that you don't know? So if it's in the Constitution and bylaws and you agree to be a member of this organization or this institution,
That's it.
church,
The organization piece, because people forget that churches are nonprofit 501c3 organizations, and we don't want to feel the feels of this being a business, right? Not necessarily like a for-profit business. It is a non-for-profit organization.
Right.
No, right. It is all raised. It is not like goods or services being sold to, build the church's bank account. But people forget that part. Like the church is accountable to the IRS. The church is accountable to the Department of State and all of these other things, just like your nonprofit organizations, like the Florida Aquarium, all these other things. Like all of those same things are required, and if you were a member of the Florida Aquarium, you could ask them for their bylaws and how they do their taxes and how they file their money. And I don't know why we feel so icky about the business part of church.
And that causes a lot of hurt alone, the business side of the church, because I think we see church as a place to build our morals and our values, our core values, and determine our norms. But we really don't get inside the business side of the church, and that leaving out that business side of the church leads to a lot of church hurt by itself. I mentioned this in the beginning of the podcast. I'll mention it again. A lot of churches start because of a church split due to church hurt. A lot of churches start from a church split due to church hurt.
Yeah.
Because I talked about being vulnerable. I talked about our emotions. I talked about how we got to understand the Constitution and bylaws, and when we don't agree, we tend, instead of having a conversation, we tend to leave and say, well, I can do it better with my own church.
Yep.
So a lot of churches are started from church hurt.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with it. I'm just go ahead and say that. I do believe that we ought to work together, and the more churches we have, the more divided that we are, because that just shows that we're not collectively working together.
Right.
But with that also being said, the reason why we have so many denominations is because we cannot agree.
We can't agree on nothing.
We have denomination split because we do not agree, and some of it is coming from church hurt.
Right.
So that's why we have so many denominations, because some of that feels from church hurt. Why we have so many churches, because I was at so-and-so church, but then the pastor didn't let me do what I thought I could do.
He wouldn't let me preach.
I decided I could go get my own regular church, and I could build a church like that. So a lot of stuff church hurt is all around us.
Yeah.
Church hurt has started some great churches, And church hurt has started some churches that you can tell that you hurt.
Yeah.
You can feel that you hurt every time that you're up there, and it's also your collaboration with other preachers. Um, I might get in trouble for saying this.
Oh, be careful.
It's on this podcast or not.
Listen, if this isn't edited out, he wanted it in here.
I might get in trouble for saying this is my personal view. I don't like going to a lot of small churches where there's only one preacher and very few members, and the preacher's got to do everything. He got to lead praise and worship. He got to uphold an offering. He doesn't have other men around the church to help lead the church. And you decided that one day, oh, God told me to start a church. Well, then if I go do research, ask your previous church what happened, you left because you got hurt at that church emotionally. And instead of coming and figuring it out with that pastor, that leader that was there, you decided, well, I'm going to leave and start my own church, and I'm going to take some of those members from that church with me.
Which is crazy.
I don't agree with that model. I don't. I believe in church planting, but I don't believe in church planting that way.
Right.
Church hurt, causing a church split.
Right. So kind of shifting gears, because one thing Paul gonna do, Paul gonna give us the preacher side of it all. He definitely gonna do that. I appreciate that. So kind of shifting gears, as a young adult ministry, as Generation Real of reconciliation, evangelism, accountability, and love, how do we reconcile our age group of church hurt millennials? Before I say back to church, how do we reconcile them back to Christ? Because I still truly believe a lot of the church hurt comes from lack of relationship. I'm not saying that feelings aren't genuine and real and true. But I also feel like if we can go into this world on a daily basis and people don't like us, people can't stand us, but we still go out in these places, we're scared to come back to church. How do we reconcile people back to Christ? How do we show people either their flaws of thinking, or how do we show them, how do we show them the correct way to love and not be church hurt?
We have to build strong relationships.
Yes, sir.
I can ask either one, all three of us, our longest lasting relationships, we could all say that they're not perfect.
Don't ask me that.
All our long so we have to understand that none of our relationships are going to be perfect, but the greatest relationships are the one that last because I know that you'll be there for me. Yeah. I know that I can always call on that person. It doesn't mean it's always gonna be perfect. It doesn't mean I can call on that person every day, but it's those relationships we have. YBC, Young Black and Christian, shout out to them. Those are building relationships. The meetups are building relationships. Right. The young adult ministry is to help build those relationships. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be some people who we don't agree with some of the things that they do. But if we can learn to agree to disagree to some things, that can help us move along a little bit further in our relationships. Mm-hmm. But we just got to build those relationships and build it for the long haul. And stop living the independent, you only live once life and try to do everything by yourself. God did not put us on earth to be alone. He put us on to work together to build those relationships. So if that's the goal, to build a relationship, we got to look at it for the long haul and how to build and grow and develop that relationship.
You have any thoughts on it, Mike?
I do. When y'all were speaking, what popped up in my mind or came into my spirit was like, in the spirit. Was that like we have to, I think part of the reconciliation or the invitation back into relationship is helping people divorce their pastors or their spiritual leaders from their ticket into heaven. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That people put their entire reliance of their salvation on their spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
And so how do we direct that as into like, yes, have reverence for and listen to and learn from spiritual leaders, but also like, let us help you navigate this personal relationship, build a personal relationship, establish a personal relationship with Christ, so that we are building new habits, right? Like we are correcting human behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like and helping people make new habits. And I think that's something that, is really important, that we're telling people not to look at the pretty headshot that's on the church website of the pastor,
right?
Right, but to look at Christ specifically.
Yeah, I love that ticket into heaven. Because some people come to church because that's your ticket down the streets paved with gold.
Yeah.
And that's not right. And I think that also leads to a lot of church hurt again, because when you are looking at this charismatic pastor or this charismatic person who's giving you, motivational quotes in that scripture, right? Like that's who you look for your salvation and how you feel about your religion. That is not authentic relationship in I believe in Christianity.
Yeah. I when you said that, that's so funny, because I was thinking about my the church that I grew up in, and it was a young pastor, charismatic, and there was an older set of members who didn't quite agree with what he was doing, and so those younger people, the young adults at that time, not like my parents' age and whatever, not my parents specifically, but some of them, they had his back. They were like, yeah, we got him. We got you. So when those old members left, then he looked to them and was like, hey, remember y'all got me? I need to see y'all in Sunday school. I need to see y'all in Bible study. So it wasn't just, rubbing shoulders and things like that. Now you had to walk your walk. You had to be a Christian. And then people got church hurt. Got that man up out the church because he asked them to be church members. And when you said that, I was like, that's so key. We got to separate the pastor and the person, because we forget that the pastor is a person, and he's not going to agree with everything that you want to do. He's not going to preach every Sunday. He's not going to let you have your way. And that's not the role of a pastor. The role of the pastor is to shepherd the people, not to be your best friend, not to give you everything you want, not to scratch your back so you can scratch his, and vice versa, and all of that stuff. But like you said, we got to stop coming in with so many expectations on what we think church should be, and how we want to do church, and understand that it's not about us. And so this, again, not discrediting people's churches, because I've seen it here. We used to serve breakfast, and there used to be a $5 donation, and there was a time where people didn't have $5 and they couldn't eat. And I would be upset that you letting people from this neighborhood not come in and eat. That defeats the whole purpose. You think they want to come back now? That's church hurt. We're like, we hurting people because we can't give them a basic necessity of food. Those things really, really matter. And yeah, church hurt can come in a lot of different forms. I know we've talked about it from leadership. I mentioned personal feelings as well, but people got to stop being mean-spirited. Yeah. As well too. I know that can be we can go down another rabbit hole there. I don't want to be too long, but I really feel like before we claim church hurt, there has to be a self-evaluation. Because when you complain about something at work, what do? They investigate it. They want to see both sides of it. You feel me? They want to know what's going on. A whole department.
The human resources.
Human resources. And sometimes it may take a week. Sometimes it may take a day, depending on the situation. So reevaluate the situation. What happened?
We need a church HR.
I ain't gonna say nothing.
Y'all disagree?
No, but
and it should,
yes and no.
Protocol.
Yeah. About
how it's navigated, but I think that is a great point.
It could HR for maybe salaried positions, or like for the church as a whole.
Okay, so I'm thinking like when I join an organization and I'm now a member of that nonprofit organization, we have orientation. We have new member orientation, and then we have annual retreats and all that stuff about fortifying our membership, also alignment with our mission, vision, values, all of those things. And what is it like? Yes, there's some personal responsibility. Like you said, on the church side of coming to Bible study, going to Sunday school, etc., to getting that. But what is it like an all hands, all congregants meeting that shows up and be like, just here's our mission, vision, values. This is our, our goals for the year. So, when we are deciding that we're going to do this strategic initiative and not this one, people can be upset because it's their feelings.
Yeah.
However, we clearly communicated that this is what we're focusing on. Like, how do we bring some of those best practices that work in the secular world or in, the business world into the church so folks have some accountability and can, again, manage expectations? I don't know. That's just the word in my spirit today, managing expectations.
My response to that is that if you go to a good church, it's already there. Because we talked about new member orientation where we introduced the policies and bylaws of the church and what we believe in, what we believe as Christians, as what does Baptist folk do.
Yeah.
So we go over all that in new members orientation, and like I mentioned before, we have quarterly business meetings.
There you go.
Where if you attend,
you gotta come. You'll
the
vote.
floor is open.
Open.
For any comments, concerns that you have, any statements that you want to make. And really, I'm going to say this on the low, the most entertaining part about church is the business meetings. But, but if you go to the business meetings, you have a mic to where you can open up, you can express yourself. My biggest thing is always, whatever happens in the business meeting, happen in the business meeting. Voice your concerns, but when we leave this business meeting, we need to be on one accord.
One accord.
The issue is that people don't show up to business meetings, express their concerns, and then
keep talking.
After the business meeting, you want to express your concerns when we already agreed, but when you had your chance for your disagreement, you never showed up.
Yeah.
So
go to business.
Go to business meeting. Part of G-R.E.A.L is that accountability. If we're gonna hold the church accountable,
we gotta be there.
If we're gonna hold young adults accountable, we gotta show up.
We gotta show up.
We gotta show up, and sometimes our church hurt causes us to disappear as opposed to show up. We get hurt from church and we disappear, so we don't hold people accountable.
Right.
We don't hold people accountable for some of the things that they're doing. So therefore, not only is it hurting you, but now it's hurting multiple church members because you never hold that person accountable.
Right.
Yes, it involves self-evaluation.
Yeah.
But after your self-evaluation, you have to show up.
Gotta show up
to those business meetings. Show up to the new members orientation. Ask questions. Like I said before, do not assume. And we can get farther. We can have those conversations. If you don't agree, if you don't like what we're doing in this next season at the church,
right?
Voice your concerns, because that's what those meetings are for.
Right.
But we got to hold everybody accountable, and you got to show up. If you don't show up, you can't hold nobody accountable.
Right. Because, there's been instances in churches, or I've heard preachers preach and they'll say something that I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with that, right? Like, and then what is the internal reflection? That'll be like, well, I made the choice to come here, or I made the choice to be a member of this church. Did I ask those questions in new member orientation to see where they stood on these different issues that, are we in alignment on that stuff? And I feel like, again, we need to hold ourselves to higher standards, right? And to be able to interrogate some of that stuff.
Yeah, show up. That's you gotta ask questions, because a lot of times people ask me stuff, and if I do know, and I knew they should have been there, I'm saying, no, you got to get that information. Like, I'm not your parent. I'm not your public access.
Your newspaper.
So, I'm not your newspaper. Sometimes you got.
I gotta push back on that. Like, yes, y'all should not be as ministers and leadership in this church a conduit so people can not show up. However. Like, instead of just being like, I don't know. Well, maybe if you came.
Well, let me preface that. Some of the stuff that they be asking, some of the stuff that deals with church stuff, like why is this way, why is that way. I can't answer that for you. You should come and find out on your own. You really should do that.
And don't send your questions by the preacher.
Don't send your questions by the preacher, because I'm gonna tell y'all right now, the camera. Can I say this? We're not speaking in these meetings. We're not. We're there, we're listening, but we're not. If you have something that you want to bring up, you got to bring it yourself. I can't do it for you. Don't send it through the preacher, because we get a negative connotation on a lot of things. Certain questions, certain things, and y'all not finna have me looking crazy. So if you got a specific crazy question, you got to ask it yourself. Put yourself out there.
I'm a pushback. If there's accessibility issues, send it in our DMs. You know, something like
Send
that.
it to Maya.
Well,
Send it to Maya. I'm going
yes,
to push
I
back. Send it to Maya.
can we
She
get on
tired of
one
me.
accord? Can we get on one accord?
Yeah.
That understanding that not everybody can make it out and stuff. So yes, we absolutely should do our best to show up. However, we're not just gonna cut people off if they have accessibility issues.
I didn't say cut people off.
Yeah,
I'm just not gonna
cut them off.
I'm just not gonna be the puppet. I'm just not gonna be the. I'm just not gonna be. This, here comes some church hurt.
I say, for instance, if you accessibility. So one of the things that I work for the state, and one of the things about the state is the biggest thing is accessibility to meetings. Everybody gotta have accessibility to meetings. I can say that there's like 4 or 5 ways to join the New Mount Zion business meeting.
At least
you can show up in person. There's
YouTube.
phone conference. There's Zoom.
I say YouTube, Zoom.
Yeah, there's multiple ways for you to join in. So accessibility to meetings is key. Like I said, for us, it doesn't. What Deron is trying to say is it doesn't look right for us, because we stand with the pastor, and for his right hand men, the ministers, to be right under him and questioning him, it does not look right. And that alone, if the leaders of the church can't stand together, what chance do you think the people in the pew have? And like I said, with the statement I made earlier, when we in the meeting, the door is open. Say what you got to say. But once we leave this meeting, we leaving on one accord.
Yeah.
So that's why I say don't send your questions through us. And now it looks like we are the one in disagreement. And like, nah, sister so and so sent like somebody sent their love offering to the 3 o'clock service.
Yeah, because I'm gonna definitely let them know. Hey, this is from Sister Maya Brown. She had a question, and this is her question. She sent it through me. Again, Maya Brown. I just threw you out there because you was right here. It just,
Paul's sitting here too.
but Paul gonna be right there with me, side by side.
I be on the Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting in the middle.
Yeah.
I be on the Zooms. But I appreciate y'all providing that context, because one, that I feel like, again, people can misconstrue stuff.
Because I sure didn't clear it up very well. I apologize,
It's
people.
okay.
I didn't
But
exegete
to
my
the
point.
about church hurt, right? People could have gotten to this part of the episode and just cut it off.
Yeah,
So I want
yeah.
us to be a good example
Yeah.
for the people.
For the people. But I will say, because I don't know how much time we have. I don't even know how long we've been doing it, but I don't want to keep y'all too long. What were you about to say?
I was going to say, we can do some action items. What are we going to ask the people to do?
Oh, that's actually what I was getting ready. Girl, we're right here. So, do you have anything before you want to?
I just want to say one thing before we go. L in G-R.E.A.L is loving. Through the church hurt, through being vulnerable, love covers all.
Most. Ooh.
So we got to understand, through it all, we have to continue to love one another. I don't want to leave that L out of G-R.E.A.L.
Can't leave the L out.
Church hurt conversation.
Can't leave it
We
out.
have to continue to love. Love comes in different forms, different shapes, different ways. Tough love, agape love, brotherly love.
Yeah.
Hebrews 13:1, let brotherly love, what it says,
Continue that.
Yes. So,
I got a song about love.
yeah, love is all around
Yeah,
you
there was a
can't
minister
afford it.
that said
What did he say?
a word that comes and goes.
What you say?
Wow. Who said that?
But so few people really know what it means to really love somebody.
Sing it,
that was
Maya.
No. That was Kirk Franklin who said that.
You know what Love also said?
What is that?
I forgot. I had something in my mind, but I forgot because I was going to use one of my sermon titles. But I forgot.
What love got to do with it?
Everything. Everything.
1 Corinthians 13.
Yes,
So we
sir.
talked about a lot today. Clearly, I feel like there was a lot of stuff that we learned from each other. Y'all saw also our internal, not necessarily disagreement, but we don't have all the same viewpoints all the time.
I'm church hurt now. I'm not coming back to G-R.E.A.L. Maya pushed back on so much of
This
what I
is
said.
ridiculous.
I'm just kidding, guys.
Jasmine, come back.
All jokes aside. All jokes aside. Again, I really don't want to offend anybody. I hope I didn't, because I know people watch and people, have gone through those things. And
Yes, and this is a safe space.
safe space, safe black space.
That's right.
Yeah, safe black space. Gotta have a safe black space. Yes, yes.
But some things that we can all do to be better examples of Christ, to extend the right hand of fellowship for folks who have been, have church hurt.
Have church hurt.
Who have been hurt in church, who have been hurt by leaders in church, right? In whatever proposition, in, at, by, around, within, right? Like
Right,
church, all
yeah.
of those things. Yeah.
Any church setting, because that's what the
through
definition
church,
says,
All of those things, right? That there are ways to get back re-engaged. We are here, of course, to welcome you into community, and also there are ways to learn more about the church as an organization. Go to your business meetings, go to Bible study, go to Sunday school to learn more, to provide your insight, right? Because we all have gifts that are supposed to be in contribution to the church. So what can you do to build the church and make it better?
Yeah.
So we all got work to do.
We all have work to do.
And I'll echo the sentiments of our pastor on Sunday. I applaud those people who have been hurt by the church, who are still actively attending church,
Yeah.
are still active members in the church. I applaud you for their effort,
Yeah.
for your reconciliation.
Yeah.
So hope that I applaud you guys. Keep coming to church. Keep working on that, and hold people accountable.
Yeah.
But always continue to show that love.
Always. Yeah, they pretty much summed up everything that I knew I wanted to say. The action items. Read Matthew. What is that? 6? Is it Matthew? It's not Matthew 6, is it?
Just read the Bible.
Just read the Bible. Well, I was just gonna talk about if you have an alt with your brother or somebody offends you, definitely look into that. Kind of piggybacking off of, I really like this segment because last month we talked about why do we need a young adult ministry, and now we're really the first, I guess, detail of millennial worship. Like, a lot of us are dealing with church hurt and we're not coming to church. So we know why it's important. Now we've talked about this. But also, the Bible says, let a man examine himself. We say that scripture every time before we do communion. And not just before communion, but examine yourself regularly. Like, are you getting easily offended over stuff? Like, are you really putting on the whole armor of God so that you can be able to stand? Are you in your word? Are you quick-tempered? Are you? Because we all have our flaws, but that doesn't mean you're a bad person. But I would just encourage all of us to look within ourselves and examine ourselves and really know why we're Christians, know why we're members of this church and what our role is and how to avoid having your feelings always hurt at church. I'm not going to sit here and tell you people ain't going to hurt your feelings because people are people. But we can't be that generation that always wants to blame it on church hurt. And then we don't go to church for 10 plus years. And then we're that 40, 50-year-old person coming back to church. And people are like, oh, we knew you. Everybody's story is different. But I really don't want church hurt to be an excuse for us anymore as young Christians, as young black Christians, as well as young members of New Mount Zion. All the young adults, whether you're active in the young adult ministry, whether you're not active. We're up next. I think I might say this like after every broadcast. We're up next. So this is our time to come together. This is our time to fellowship and really, again, examine ourselves. Really take a deep dive into what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a member of New Mount Zion. What does that look like now and moving into the future? I've had a good time with you guys tonight. This has been good. I enjoy this. You all know me and Paul. We started it out the end of last year. It was kind of busy. Some things happened, but now we're getting more structure. Next month, I'm not going to tell you who our special guest is going to be, but we will have a special guest next month in the month of April. Shout out to the other people. Shout out to this one's gonna come out in March, and then the next one April. So the one in April, the one that we filmed for April, is gonna be really, really good. Also, be on the lookout. We are looking to do something with the young adults, maybe one Sunday after church, maybe like a little lunch brunch, just a little gathering. It won't be at church. We'll let you put your hair down and, you know, be adults, saved adults, saved adults, saved, because we don't want anybody going back and talking about the young adults is wilding. Set the example. Y'all remember that 1 Timothy 4:12, we talked about it. Y'all know we got a couple scriptures that we always like to mention, but we really mean that. We really do mean that. So before we sign off, do y'all have
Follow us on Instagram.
Yeah. He gonna put them like right there.
Follow Generation G-R.E.A.L on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I gotta say. You ended it so perfectly. I don't even want to say anything to how you ended it.
That's crazy. I don't know why he does me like this. Maya.
Also, like, comment, subscribe to our YouTube. It's a bell. Turn on the
Ding.
notifications.
And then come to church on Sunday. We want to see you on Sunday. Whether it's, you probably gonna see Paul at 8 o'clock. I don't always go to 8 o'clock. So you gonna see Paul if you go to 8 o'clock. But at 11 o'clock, we want to see you. We want to introduce yourself. If you've never spoken to us, like I said, I don't always go out and shake hands and kiss babies and things like that. But if we would love to meet you all, speak with you all, and hear your ideas. You know, just because we are the leadership of the young adult ministry, yes, Maya, don't get me crazy like that. Just because we're the leadership of G-R.E.A.L doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you. You all are members, just like we are. You all have things that you want to see done, you want to get done as well, and we want to add that to our calendar as well. We're looking at some Bible studies, even some Sunday school, some like Sunday school brunch type thing. Yeah, we want all of that. We want you here. We want your face in the place. So we're signing off. Yeah. I wasn't even done. Church hurt. Bye, y'all.